Welcome back. Here's the second part of giving an effective oral presentation. Again, this is part 2 of our 3-part series, okay? Now we're going to get into the delivery of oral presentations, okay? When you're speaking, your voice plays a huge important role. Now, sometimes some of us, we may be foreigners in another country giving a speech. Or maybe we physically have some kind of a handicap, like a slur or some kind of other speech impediment that we have. Now, this does not mean you cannot give effective oral presentations. You can. And you do have the ability of doing so. But it just takes a little more effort in being able to overcome those and recognizing what areas you need to overcome. Does that make sense? I hope so. Because anybody, you can give a good oral presentation. Now let's talk about voice. The voice is important because it's going to need a lot of quality. And the pitch, the tone, the intonation that you use can have an effect on the reaction that you get from people. Now, I have a funny example here. Let's watch this example of this person wants to be the new treasurer of his community, okay? And this is his speech, okay? I'm going to rewind it here a little bit. Now, listen to his voice, okay? And how he raises his voice. Watch this.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Starr County Republican Party Executive Committee, good evening. And thank you not only for your attendance, but for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Davidson.
I'm sorry. This is not a good example. Did you hear how he raised his voice almost like he was shouting? My name is Phil Davidson. Like he was getting ready to fight. Also, we'll get into his physical aneurysms, how he walked back and forth in a minute, but his voice, he wants to have desire and passion. You know, I think he is trying to get over that he's passionate about this position and that he wants it, but it's coming across that he's wanting to fight, or it's almost he's in a battle. So don't.
And I am seeking our party's nomination
for
the
this
position of Starr County Treasurer on November 10th, November of 2010.
Now, also his intonation, how he raises his voice, or when he starts to emphasize what he's trying to say, is wrong too. His timing of when he starts to talk and when he wants to emphasize certain words is off. So this is a good example of what not to do. Do not do this. Okay? Each language and each culture that you're part of has different intonations and inflections in your culture, in your speech, and you have to know those. Okay? This is a good example of entirely having your timing off and emphasizing the wrong things at the wrong time. Okay? So, if we go back to our voice and talking about the voice, the rate, the speed of which you speak as well. Now remember, our audience is important at this point, right? Because if I speak really fast and you don't know what I'm saying, then it's really hard for you to pay attention and be able to understand what I'm trying to say, right? So when I speak, you need to make sure that your audience understands and that you're speaking at a natural speed, because you don't want to speak too slowly, right? It's a dramatization of that. But anyway, make sure that your rate of speed is appropriate. Okay? The body. Now, if we go back to our example, how we use our body is important. Okay? Moving around may be necessary when we're giving a speech to help kind of keep people's attention. But let's go back to our bad example. Okay? Now watch him.
Excuse me. In terms of my background, I am from the village of Minerva.
You see how he keeps walking back and forth, but he keeps his eyes on the paper wherever he's at. He has to go back because he wants to read it and not make any mistakes. But I think, to me, this gives me the impression he's not prepared. He probably wrote the speech and took time to read it, but did not give time to prepare and to practice your speech. Now, if we jump back a little bit and talk about the planning process, practice is an important part. You can't not just write your speech and then expect to have it be perfect when you give it. You got to practice, okay? This is a perfect example of that. He's in front of all of these people. He wants to make a good impression, but the problem is that he did not practice and doesn't really know what he's talking about or what he wants to talk about. So he's reading it off the paper. This speech probably would have been better being memorized, or doing the extemporaneous type where you use bullets, where he makes sure that he stays on the topics that he wants to cover, but then he can express it in his own words. In this, he almost forgets his own name, I think, in the beginning. So make sure that you practice, and that remember that when you're in front of people, you're going to be nervous. Okay? It's a whole different ball game when you're in a room all alone and you're practicing your speech, and a whole nother thing when you get in front of everybody else and giving your speech. The emotions start building up. And when that happens, you naturally start speaking faster. And your mind starts to forget about things. Your memory starts going from here to here. And this is a prime example of what's happening. He is forgetting everything. He's nervous. And so he's trying to embellish. He's trying to exaggerate everything. Trying to overcome his deficiencies with energy and passion. Which is not a bad idea, but you've got to use it appropriately. Okay? Now, watch a little bit more.
Where I'm serving my 13th year of elected service as a Minerva Council member. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public administration, and a master's degree in communication.
He probably should have left that last one out. Because being a master at communication, one would know that what he's doing is not what he's trying to do. He's yelling at people instead of trying to convince them, persuade them to vote for him. Anyway, look at his mannerisms. If we go back here to our body, the eyes. Did you see his eyes how determined and fixed they were, like he was going to fight somebody. You don't want the crazy eyes, okay? Be natural. Try, please try to calm your emotions, okay? Even when you are excited about the topic, you can be too excited. And even on the other extreme, where you're really excited to tell somebody, you're not necessarily fearful, but you're excited, it can go that same direction of where the things that you want to say become very narrow. Too many things get in your head, and you start wanting to cover all of these topics. When you're excited or stressed, your speech starts to increase faster, okay? Your speech rate starts to get faster, and your pitch starts to get higher, okay? So you really start talking higher, okay? So the key is to relax and to make sure that you keep your head clear, okay? As you're talking, your body. Don't be like this girl in our other example
The product
of where
that they're trying to sell.
she is
Usually, however,
playing with her hair.
you can't.
This type of behavior conveys that she does not really care about what she's doing. She's more interested in her hair and what she's doing instead of on the people. You've got to make sure that you keep your eyes and pay attention to the people around you. Your body language conveys a lot more than just your words of what you're saying. She is saying one thing, but her body is saying a different thing. You understand? Okay. So, the eyes, your hand, your upper limbs. Sometimes you can use your hands too much. Or maybe not enough. Maybe you're just going to stay there and just talk. And there is no life. People want to know that you're human, that you care about this subject or you know about it. Okay? So, make sure that you use the appropriate amount of hands. Okay? Our guy with the there's
In
these
terms
eyes
of
again.
elections across Stark County, I have represented our party twice on the county ballot.
Okay. When he's using, see that sharp gesture? How he is using quick hand motions. Okay? That also conveys a lot of energy and almost, again, I can't emphasize, he keeps wanting to fight people, I think. He's so violent. Man. When you're using your hands, make it natural and make it flow, okay? No sharp or abrupt motions, okay? That throws off everything that you're trying to do, okay? Okay, that's enough about the upper limbs. Now the appearance. The one thing that this guy, our bad example person, does do right is his dress, okay? He's wearing a nice suit. He looks presentable. Now, when you are giving a speech, even though this is a student, depending on who your audience is, would this be appropriate in a business? Probably not, right? There is another speech that I want to give you. This is another funny thing. But notice his preparation that he's done. We'll get into this in a minute. But look at how he's dressed. Now he's half right. He's got Levi's on, which is a no-no. He does have a nice tie and a shirt. So maybe half points on that one. But still not up to snuff. Again, Your appearance and how you look plays an important part as well. So it isn't bad to dress nice for your teachers when you're giving a presentation, okay? A little flattery can go a long ways, okay? It shows that you're prepared, you're taking this seriously, okay? And can help you a lot. Movement. Now, we have talked about, in our last one, that guy that's using the floor. Did you see how he... let me go back to our GOP candidate, this guy. Remember how he moved across the floor? He went over that direction, then he went this direction, and he keeps coming back to read, right? This is a poor use of using the floor. You can use it too much or not enough. Sometimes when you're talking, you do need to move a little bit. And depending on your surroundings, okay? Sometimes it does not allow you to move. So, therefore, maybe changing your body position a little bit or looking in a different direction at some of the other people in the audience can help you, okay? When you're restricted, when you cannot use the floor, you can use your head to kind of help instead of using your body. Does that make sense? Okay. So, movement. Make sure that you're using the floor. If you have a stage and you're able to move, or you're in a classroom and you're trying to get over or convey information or persuade people, sometimes how you move can make a difference. Now, if I get really close, does that make you comfortable? Probably not. But there are times when we're talking and we want to emphasize something that moving in a little bit can help. Okay? Our eyes can say a great deal. Okay? Our hands. Moving across the floor or moving towards certain people at certain times can help emphasize things. Right? Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is visual aids. Now, in our last, in this last example that I did, not this guy, but our funny presentation, this guy brings a lot of visual presentations. Okay, and they're good, but this is what can happen. Okay. I'm just going to let you watch this for a second.
Is this mine? Is it on? Check 1 2 check over 1 2 3. Look, I am your friend. Okay, so
okay. The rule is, at this point, I'm going to pause it. There's more to this that I'm going to let you see here in a minute. But I want you to understand that when you're preparing for your speech, make sure that you have everything ready. Okay? Okay, so watch and see this. Watch this guy's visual aids that he's brought. And you'll see that he's not prepared at all. He's stumbling around trying to get everything set up. Things aren't ready. He doesn't know the technology very well that he's using. And I guess that could even go for the poster board that he's trying to write on as well. It has that fall down. He's trying to rush too much. When you're in a presentation, always look relaxed. Okay? Watch some of this.
you need. Basically, I'm here from the Fun Lion Incorporated business. As you can see, the Fun
It's got it upside down.
Who's got the phone on? So, hello? They make you want to sing a jungle song.
See how he's using the lion? I mean, that isn't that bad at all. But as he's using it, you've got to have your examples ready and prepared, right? Now, come to think of it, you look at these presentations and you look at everybody's. One thing you have to understand, there is no perfect presentation. Notice my glasses. Do you have them on or off? This can be a visual aid. You know, the things that you use can be different as well. So, as you're using visual aids, be cautious and make sure that they're not distracting you away from the topic. Make sure that they're helping you. Okay? Don't give them a chance to actually start distracting and taking away the attention of the members from what you're trying to say. Okay? So, there's a list here that you'll see of bullet points of examples of visual aids that you could use. Visibility. Make sure that when you're using visual aids, that one, that they can see them and that it is in an appropriate area. When you're talking and you have your visual aid in front of you and you're talking behind it, it isn't that good. Okay? You want it to be an accentuating point, something that helps. Okay? Also, visibility, you being visual. Sometimes, depending on your size and the stage, the place that you're giving your presentation, sometimes you won't be able to be seen. So make sure that what you want to be seen is seen. Okay? Professional image, we talked about that earlier, making sure that you have a good image, good presentation ability about you. Make sure the equipment is available. All the things that you saw in that last video are things not to do. You saw him stumbling around the technology. Make sure that you're able to beforehand go and check out if you need to use, let's say, a PowerPoint or a computer, or have some other visual aids that require some kind of a hookup or equipment and stuff, that those things are available and that you know how to use them. Okay? Don't wait until you're giving the presentation to try to figure all that stuff out. Do it beforehand. Okay? Reliability. Let's read this one together because this is something that we take in a few different ways. Know the risk when you make a media selection. Okay? Computers are particularly prone to failure, but handouts are virtually foolproof. Meaning the analog, the touchy-feely papers. Okay, use a reliable equipment as possible, and always make sure that you have a backup system in case the technology fails. Okay, so it's not a matter of if, but when. And when it happens, you've got to be ready to make do without. So using technology can be an aid, but it can also be a hindrance if it's starting to distract from your presentation. Now, let's go into PowerPoints just a little bit, okay? Because we can have PowerPoint overload, especially if you're reading every slide, right? That becomes too much of a distraction. I mean, we can sit here and read, and you don't have to say anything. If you're just reading the slides, it makes the audience members bored, and it starts distracting from what you're trying to say, okay, from the purpose, the meaning, and takes away from the energy that you've built up. This next one, intrusiveness. Okay, sometimes our examples can upset or maybe controversial, or be something that may offend somebody. So be aware of that. Sometimes we do want that shock value. We want something that is shocking because that may drive home our point, which is fine. But we don't want to offend anybody that we're not wanting to do, if that makes sense. Okay? I say this in the example. Let's say that you're giving an example of a person of a person that made a rude comment, okay, stated something very vulgar and outright nasty about somebody, and their topics are something that is not appropriate at all. Maybe it could be about sex or something like that, that is just offensive to a lot of people. If you're trying to drive home the point, then maybe sometimes those things, visual aids or speech, using vulgar language or something like that, can be, and I say can be with limited ability, used. Okay? But even then, vulgar language is rarely appropriate. Okay? The next one, portability. Now, if you've got a lot of stuff, in our last example, this guy, when he starts coming in, he's got way too much stuff, right? He can't carry it all. He can barely carry it. And it takes him so much time to get set up. So, please be aware. Make sure that you don't have too much, that you're able to pack everything and that you have everything that you need. Cost. Of course, this is pretty intuitive. You can read it. It just depends on what kind of speech you're using and what you're going to be needing. Okay. Each are the ease of production, making sure that you're able to use what you're going to be doing, the media. So if you're using YouTube or using a slideshow or something like that, that you have the right amount of internet access, you have the ability of using the internet, and your equipment is able to handle everything. Okay? And then that goes with the ease of use, making sure that you know how to use those things and that you can do it. Audio and visual aids are an awesome thing, and they should be used because it will really enhance your presentation. As we go on, these are some these numbered items here, 1 through 7. You'll see these are just some points to make with visual aids, making sure we'll just run through these really quick. Okay, you can read the details on these. Prepare professional looking visuals. We talked about that. Make sure everyone can see and read the visuals. We talked about that. Point to the specific part of a visual that you're discussing. Okay, so if you have a case in point, make sure that you're directing their attention to where it needs to be. Don't always just assume. Okay. Interpret the visuals. Sometimes you've got to tell them what they're looking at, especially when you're using graphs or pie charts and things like that. Point the different sections out, even if you think it's intuitive and you think it's obvious that they should know those things. Don't take that for granted. Make sure that you're taking the time to discuss that. Okay? Especially in a speech, because remember, our mind goes from here to here in our ability to think, because we have that stress that's creeping down on us, and our speech starts to speed up. We want to hurry and get this done, and we've got to kind of fight that a little bit. So make sure that you're taking the appropriate time. When you have multiple visuals, make sure that you have them well rehearsed and you know which ones to use and when. Okay? Handouts. Now, the trouble with a lot of handouts is that they have a lot of text, which in some cases is appropriate, but should be used as a reference for them later on to be able to refer back to. Okay, not while they're in the presentation. Okay, if you're giving them something, the ideal thing is to give them something like a pamphlet or something that has bullet points with, to help them be able to remember the highlights of what you're trying to get across. Okay, the room layout. Let's talk a little bit about the room. Try to make sure that you know where you are giving your presentation. There are times when you may not know, but the times that you do, go check it out. Make sure that you know where your audience is sitting and who the VIPs are. Many times there are some VIPs that may be attending. It could be your boss. It could be a chairman. It could be a delegate. It could be somebody that is an authority. And make sure that you know where they are and where they're going to be sitting. Okay. Make sure that in that the sound, that if, let's say, you have some technical difficulties, that you're able to project your voice if need be. Or evaluate whether you need to use a mic or not. These are all things to determine in that room layout. Okay? Make sure that the chairs, the tripods, the projectors, all of that stuff is in the proximity of where people can see it and be used, and that they can see you, you can see them, and everything looks good and has a good flow. Especially, there are some presentations that you want some interactivity, some ask some questions and get feedback and be able to have a discussion. In that case, you may want to have more of a circle type, where with you in the center to be able to kind of facilitate things, just as an example. Okay. Otherwise, if you're being the expert and that they're going to be asking you questions, the Q&A, which we'll be talking a little bit in a moment about, but in those cases, make sure that things are situated where you can hear them and they can hear you. Sometimes when you're in a big auditorium and you ask for audience's input, sometimes you can't hear them. So you've got to compensate for that somehow. You've got to make sure that you know how to get down the stage, or they can get up, or vice versa. Okay? Time. Ooh, this one. This one here is a killer. Time can be your friend and it can be your enemy. And it can change at the drop of a hat. If you're not prepared and you're not ready, time can escape you. Meaning that your 15-minute talk or presentation that you were supposed to do gets done in 5. That's not good. Okay? You want to make sure that you have the amount of time appropriate to be able to give your presentation. Sometimes you get caught speaking too long and you've got to cut it short. Either direction that it is, the time frame that you're using, you've got to make sure that, one, you're keeping time and you know about how long it is to be able to convey certain points across. Does that make sense? So, practice, practice, practice. Okay? Then, last but not least, is the Q&A session, or the question and answer. Most of the time, especially informative speeches, persuasive speeches, some people may have questions, and you may want to give them time. Usually you want to give them time to ask questions and to be able to give some answers, because this can help overcome some of the things that either they missed or maybe you missed. Remember, not every presentation is perfect. Okay? Just accept that at the beginning. There's always the speech that you prepare, the speech that you give, and then the speech that you wish to give. So everybody usually gives 3 speeches, or has 3 speeches, right? The prepared one, the one they give, and then the one they wish they give. The ones that they wish they said. So that Q&A part is the piece of the presentation that is able to fill in some of those gaps. Okay? Look at number 5 here. This is a great one. If you don't know the answer, admit it and write it down, along with the name and phone number of the person that asked the question. Okay? Let them know. This gives them the sense that you do care, and that, you may know a lot about this, but you may not know everything. And that's okay. But give them the sense that you're going to make sure that you're going to find out if you don't know. And it's always prudent to make sure that you do. Number 6. This is another good one. If you have a hostile questioner, this means a person that is really trying to pick you apart or be negative, use the CARD technique. Okay, C-A-R-D. C, clarify the question. Repeat it back to them to make sure that you understand. Okay, so if they ask a question, you can respond by saying, okay, so what you're asking is blah, 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 and then you restate what their question is. The A is acknowledge the importance of the person's concern. Oh, I can see how passionate you are about this, or I can see that this is a big concern for you. And then R, respond as tactfully as possible. Okay? Avoid hostility yourself. This is the thing, is they may be giving you a lot of negative energy, and they may be hostile and angry. But that doesn't mean that you need to reciprocate that anger back towards them, meaning that you don't need to be angry back. Okay? Emotion begets emotion. So remain calm. If you remain calm, then their hostility can be lowered. Okay? And it may be something that you're passionate about and they're trying to rip it apart. That's okay. Try to stay as calm as possible. When things get out of hand, usually it's escalated because both parties get heated and they try to outdo each other. And you don't want that. Okay? D, the last one, is to deflect. Deflect the content to something that is related to the question, but more positive. Okay? Use their question and try to figure out a link between what their question is, and if you have an answer, give them an answer. But if it's something that, no matter what you're going to do, is going to make them angry or escalate the situation, try to link it to something that's more positive. Okay? That's the CARD technique. That one is easy to say, but it's hard to do. It's an art. You've got to just practice. Try to think of, as you're planning, when you're writing your speech and you're looking at things, try to take the opposite position and try to put some of those questions that you can think of in your speech, the answers, so that those questions that people are running through their mind are going to be answered already through your speech. Then, when it becomes the Q&A time and they're asking questions, you've already got it down and you've got answers for you. Try to anticipate as much as possible the questions that people may have. Okay? And then, number 7, use a visual aids to support your answers. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So if you can find one, try to find a video, a picture, or something that you can use to help verify or resolve the person's concerns. And then this last piece is about adapting. Adapting the presentation. Sometimes things can happen. Sometimes the speaker before you goes too long, or maybe goes too short and you've got to lengthen or shorten your presentation down. So know the different parts of how you can either summarize your speech or be able to lengthen it and give more. Because remember, many times if you've got let's say a 15-minute speech that you need to give, prepare at least 20 minutes worth of information, or double is even safer. 20 or 30 minutes, okay, but at least 20 minutes, okay, for a 15-minute talk. Because sometimes naturally we just have we're adept to just kind of really go a lot faster when we're under stress because we want to get out of there, right? So you've got to be on your toes and know where to lengthen things out. All right, this last page here, you'll see that there's a list of problems and then some possible solutions. I'm not going to go over all of these, but I'll hit on some of them. Okay, and we'll talk about some of the bigger ones. Okay, boredom, of course. As we get into these problems, especially with boredom, you'll see it on their faces. So when you're given your speech, keep an eye on the audience and look at them. Are most of them bored? Are they paying attention? Or are they looking at their phones? Are they doing something else? If you've got that going on, then you need to change things up. Maybe you need to be more energetic. Okay? Let me give you an example of being... No, there's a piece later on that I want to show you. So, with boredom, try to tell a story or a joke. Or maybe, if you're going to be speaking for a long time, maybe it's time to take a break. Okay? Or use an activity of some kind. Phones. Disruptive behavior. Somebody's got their phone on. Obviously, if the person's talking on the phone and they're being loud, you can stop your presentation and wait for them. If you've got a bunch of people being very disruptive, there's a point where you've kind of got to feel your way through this, because there are times when people may be whispering, but you've got to be the professional and just keep going no matter what. And then there are times when maybe you do need to stop and direct your attention to them to help them be more quiet, especially if it's kind of a critical moment in your speech. Okay, but it could be that they're whispering because somebody has fainted or has a medical emergency or something. You know, you just never know, but you got to pay attention. Okay. All right. All of these next things that you see here, fatigue and the disruptive behavior, things like that, you're going to be able to see them by looking at the audience. The same way with misunderstanding. If you've got a bunch of people scratching their heads and kind of wondering what's going on, oh, maybe you need to re-explain some things or slow down. When the equipment breaks down, again, make sure that you have a backup plan. And then time reduction. If you've got to cut your talk short, make sure you know how to summarize things up. Okay? Okay, this is the end of section 2, and we've just talked about some of the techniques about giving presentations. Okay, so prepare for section 3, and we'll be moving along. We'll catch you then.